Hello. So we are continuing to work through Ruth, and I know in previous weeks we've had a whole chapter in a week, whereas this week we're not going to look at a whole chapter. We're just going to look at half of chapter 4. So this week it's Ruth chapter 4 verses 1 to 12. So please, if you haven't read it already, why don't you hit pause, just grab your Bible, 12 verses, have a read of Ruth chapter 4, verses 1 to 12. So I'm going to carry on as if you've read that. And you could say it's a very boring passage, because this almost is the transaction of Boaz with the elders and the guardian redeemer for the marriage to Ruth. But actually there's some really great principles in these verses. So there's a couple of things that jump out at me. First of all is this idea of the power of public witness and the power of integrity really jumps out in these verses to me. Boaz here shows a deep, deep love for Ruth publicly by holding integrity with the law, but integrity with other people and integrity with his family. We find in these verses that this interaction takes place at the town gate. Now, the town gate, if you didn't know, was the centre of the official business of the town. So key trade leaders, the elders of the town, would be expected to be found there, as would anybody with any important business. This was the town gate is almost like the heartbeat of a town, the centre where people came and went. So anything that happened at the town gate, anybody of any importance whose opinion carried weight publicly, they would be there to see it. This act of Boaz, of love and integrity, was done not only in front of the elders of the town as witnesses, but all the main players of the town. Already, I was impacted by the public nature of this agreement and conversation. Boaz had nothing to hide from anybody. And he wanted everyone to see that he was withholding nothing as well. As I was reading these 12 verses, I felt challenged. Do I live with the same integrity in the open public forum? Am I so open-handed with how I feel and what I believe, especially when it comes to my relationship with God? How much of that is seen in the public space and the public forum? Do I live in such a way that my love for God is plain, is obvious, and is spoken about and recognised in the public view? Or is my relationship with God simply an agreement I've made in a private space and it stays there? A deep love does not hide. A deep love lives in a way for all to see. That deep love is our deep love for God plain for all to see. So, as I said, Boaz hides nothing from both the elders and the guardian redeemer that is closest to Ruth. Interestingly, we aren't told the name of that guardian redeemer, and I don't know why, other than he wasn't someone that we needed to particularly know the name of or remember. He isn't the focus of the story. Boaz's actions here are the main focus. Boaz is completely honest with the guardian redeemer. He tells him that a piece of land is available to the family from Naomi's husband Elimelech dying. He tells him that as closest family relative, that this man, this guardian redeemer, has the right to it. He has something to gain from this arrangement. So even though Boaz is putting at risk his marriage to Ruth, he shares with this man, the guardian redeemer, the truth that says he will gain something from Elimelech's death. At this, the guardian redeemer says that he's going to claim the land. Why wouldn't he? He's just been told a family member has died and he's owed a piece of land from it. He has so much to gain. But Boaz hasn't finished sharing the whole truth. If this man, this guardian redeemer, was to claim the land as his right as guardian redeemer under the law, then under the law he must also marry Ruth. Suddenly, this free slice of land that the man, this guardian redeemer, saw wasn't the free slice of land that he wanted. It came along with Ruth and Naomi. The guardian redeemer did not want this, even though it was his right under the law. For some reason, and we're not told what that reason is, he's already bound to something and cannot follow through on this if it means he has to marry Ruth. As I say, we're not told what it is, but I live under the idea that if the Bible doesn't tell me something, then I don't necessarily need to know it. So what happens now is now the guardian redeemer has rejected his claim on that land and in turn the marriage to Ruth. This paves the way for the second closest guardian redeemer, who is Boaz. Boaz can now fill the gap and enter into that public agreement in front of the town elders and anyone else watching. Boaz, yes, he publicly confirms the transfer of the land, but he also publicly confirms that he will be marrying Ruth. For the original guardian redeemer, this was only about worldly gain and financial gain. When it became clear that there was a deeper gain attached, he backed out. Boaz, yes, he claimed the land, but his main intentions are declared publicly to marry Ruth. What I love about this moment in front of the elders is that the elders' response. The elders don't respond and they're into the financial transaction of the land. Their response to Boaz is about the love and the marriage. That's what they see is the most important thing, because Boaz has done all this in front of everybody. They see his intentions, they see his heart, they see his deep love, and it's that deep love that the elders of the town want to bless. They pray a public blessing on the union and on Ruth. Remember, Ruth, someone who previous to this moment would have been a social outcast because of her status. She was now not only publicly seen and accepted, but she was being lifted up and blessed by the town elders. Boaz's actions to act publicly with integrity not only reconciled Ruth in the private space, but in the public space as well. A public and complete restoration for her that would not have been available if this arrangement had been done cloak and dagger in darkness and closed rooms. When we love publicly, when we forgive publicly, when we serve publicly, we're able to ensure that the love of God is seen and experienced publicly. For some, they have been so rejected by the world that light needs to be shone on them with love in public. Why? So a public restoration and healing can happen in their hearts for the kingdom and the glory of God. We see that here with Boaz and Ruth. Are we willing to love? Are we willing to serve? Are we willing to forgive in the public as well as the private spaces for the kingdom and the glory of God, for the deep love he has for us and the world that we live in?